Welcome back to Elevating Consciousness. I'm your host, Artem Zen, and our guest today is Stephen Zerfas, the CEO and co-founder of Jhourney, a tech startup scaling transformative meditation through a data-driven lens, guiding complete beginners into deeply absorbed meditation states known as the jhanas in less than a week. Stephen discovered the first 3 jhanas through his own practice, and upon learning of their profound history, made it his mission to bring them to as many people as possible. He has since trained with leading jhana teachers, including Lee Brasington and Delson Armstrong. Thus far, Jhourney has served over 13,000 alumni with a 60 to 70% success rate in helping participants access the jhanas on week-long retreats. Before founding Jhourney, Stephen worked as a software engineer at Lyft and a management consultant at Bridgespan, a Bain affiliate. A University of Notre Dame graduate, he lives in the Bay Area with his wife and daughter. The following conversation was recorded live during Limicon, a digital conference for people in the liminal, gamey, and metamodern adjacent spaces. In it, we speak about what the jhanas are, how Stephen discovered them through self-experimentation, and why he decided to found a tech company that teaches them. Later, Stephen guides us through a towards jhana meditation, and we close with a group discussion on whether morality is or must be part of such meditation practice. Enjoy. Stephen Zerfas, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Artem.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, and I'd love to set a little bit of context before we dive in. Lately, I've been hearing a lot more people talking about jhana meditation, and in particular, your company, Jhourney, which promises to teach jhana in days, not decades. And I've been meditating for about a decade myself, but I have little experience with the jhanas. So I'm curious to explore whether they might have something to offer my own path. And today we're just going to dialogue about jhana, and then you'll guide us through a meditation, and we'll close with a Q&A and group discussion. And maybe you can kick us off by explaining what the jhanas are, how you became fascinated with them, and what ultimately led you to start a company dedicated to helping people access them more easily.
Yeah, happy to. Before we jump in, can I just get a little context on what the event is or who the folks in the audience are? I want to make sure I can tailor my remarks as we go best I can to meet everybody's interests.
Yeah, people could comment, I guess, in the chat box, what place you're coming from, what orientation. My sense is that there's people here that a lot of people here are interested in meditation. Some probably have a dedicated meditation practice. I know some here have had experience with jhanas, but I would imagine that most are probably either haven't had the experience or had very little experience with it. So that's how I would kind of frame it. I don't know if that helps you, Stephen.
Yeah, that is helpful. And in the event that is bringing everybody together, I don't think everybody is here just for me, right? There's a broader event going on.
Well, this is actually Limicon. This is an event during Limicon, which is a digital conference for people in the liminal space. And it's just kind of people interested in the metamodern, systems change, contemplation, kind of these broader interlapping communities and spaces.
Okay, great. I'm feeling more clear. And when you say the liminal space, is there something you mean specific by that, or was that what you were pointing to with a combination of metamodern and contemplatives?
Yeah, the liminal web is kind of like a term that's been coined for this kind of overlapping spaces of people that are kind of interested in the meta crisis, interested in personal transformation, but also systems change. And yeah, I mean, there's articles kind of mapping that, like where the liminal space begins, where it ends, and it's kind of unclear. It's very liminal, but I think for me, my kind of like corner of it is the contemplative aspect of it. So I think that's where you would fit in. And I think a lot of other people here have this kind of interest in contemplation and meditation as well.
Awesome. Okay. Sounds like a fascinating set of ideas. I'm sure it drew a fascinating group of people, and I'm excited to be here with you all. Can I ask one more question before we jump in? How many people here have heard of the jhanas, Jhourney, and are skeptical? So give me just like, you know, a sidebar thumb if you're have, you know, no opinion, have not heard of us. Turn it a little up if you're excited about what you've heard, and turn it down if you're like, uh-oh, this guy's trouble. Okay, look at that. That's helpful. Knowing whether or not I'm speaking to folks who are coming in with sort of pre-informed skepticism is a little different than folks who are coming in knowing very little, or maybe even have a little bit of excitement. And I am excited to address the skepticism and share what skepticism I know is out there for everybody. So we'll get to that regardless, but it's just helpful to know who all is here. So thank you all. So, okay. So Artem, I think you kicked it off by saying, can you introduce the jhanas and sort of how I became so interested in them? And so maybe I'll kick this off with my personal story and how much this path has been for me, like unspeakably valuable, and one that's just been an ongoing journey of coming home, I think is maybe the best phrase. This all started for me years ago when I was in a really tough spot. I was breaking up with a co-founder and a girlfriend in the same week. I went from 2 jobs to no job in a day. And as a Hail Mary, looking for some sort of relief in a tough time, I went on a 10-day silent meditation retreat. It was pretty intensive. If anybody is familiar, it was a Goenka style Vipassana. And so it was 10.5 hours a day or so on the cushion, wake up at 4 a.m., certain time periods in which you weren't supposed to move a muscle for an hour or so, this kind of thing. And it was hell. I had 3 migraines in 8 days. It seemed like my whole world was crashing down on me. I injured my knee trying to sit still like a statue. And so on the last day, out of desperation, I changed the technique. And about 4 hours later, first off, my stress headache that was going to become migraine number 4 went away. And then 4 hours later, in the back of the meditation hall, things just opened up in a way that explosive is kind of a violent word. And what I mean to point to is just like the magnitude. It was like it was an earthquake level moment for me, where the most blissful experience that I had had in years, waves of gratitude, relief, joy, bliss, peace, grief, in turn was sort of moving through my body. I was screaming tears quietly. And I thought, what the heck is this? I am at an all-time low. I just had 3 migraines in 8 days. If this is replicable, this changes everything. And the teachers on the retreat, sort of as is taught in their tradition, were it's important to sort of ignore these kinds of experiences. And I was like, I'm sorry, y'all, I have to see this through. So I did after retreat what I thought any engineer would do. And I sat on the edge of my bed for an hour a day running personal experiments to see if I could recreate that state, that experience. And I was almost certain it was a fluke. I had never heard of the jhanas. I had no framework for this. I was also setting out on my own because of some assumptions. I actually grew up Catholic and ended up taking some wonderful gems from that, but also spent a lot of time in Catholic theology, reading and not having a lot of behavior changing insight. So I assumed, plus because the teachers told me to ignore this at this retreat, that this was going to be something I would have to figure out on my own. 4 months later, it's clearly showing all the hallmarks of a skill. It had gone from like 10% of the time after about 45 minutes to about 80% of the time. And so I doubled down and I did 2 to 3 hours a day. I rotated the technique every 7 days, and slowly but surely got this thing dialed in, where it was basically 20 minutes independent of conditions. I was crying in like a gratitude, bliss piece before work every morning. And much more important than the altered state itself was how it began to change my traits. Altered states were altering traits. I would drop into one of these altered experiences, and then I would go looking for the most difficult psychological thing I could come up with, whether it was death of a loved one or semi-traumatic breakup for me or some identity-threatening thing that was going on at work. And the 2 experiences would wash over each other, and there'd be this palpable release. And the charge of whatever I was carrying around that trigger would be replaced with this ease and acceptance that would persist off the cushion. It would reset the emotional defaults. And so not only was I having this peak experience every morning, but I was beginning to soften the edges of my own personality. in engineering speak, I'm an engineer, and maybe some of the metamodern crowd are also engineers. I was checking out the feature branch, hacking on the bug, and shipping it back into prod, and then it would run automatically for me the next time I encountered that trigger. So this, in a matter of what was like 8 to 10 months, went from the most interesting thing in my life to maybe the most important thing. And since then has just been an ongoing journey of softening and coming home. A couple years later, I learned what the jhanas were. In the interim, it was basically my secret. I didn't really have anybody to talk to about this. And I remember getting goosebumps first when I saw someone on Twitter talking about it. I showed my girlfriend, not my wife. And I was like, look, I'm not the only one. and then I found a book and got goosebumps. I remember where I was. I remember what room it was in, the light coming through the window, the temperature in the room, and like how crazy it was to read a book and be like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what happens to me. I'm not alone. And then it was not just descriptive, it was also prescriptive, because I had discovered maybe the first 3 or 4 jhanas, but then I just followed the instructions and it was like the 4th jhana was clearly waiting for me. So I ended up going to go sit with a number of different teachers that are sort of well-known in a couple different traditions and sort of modern Western Buddhism. And shortly after reading that book, I had to quit my job. It was a proper ignition moment. I had no choice. And the thesis, I'll just sort of wrap this answer here, Artem, to sort of talk about the company, which is that immediately after being like, wait a second, I'm not alone. Thousands of people in the US alone practice these states. Why the hell is it not millions? This is so much more important to me than a little incremental stress reduction from a meditation app. And I didn't even know this existed. And it turns out it does exist. It's known, thousands of people. So this led me to think, what on earth is going on here? And I have a few different answers to that question. Some of them are sociocultural and involve things like how ideas spread, and that might be of interest to a metamodern community. But the driving one, the one that's really at the root of all of it, is that I think meditation suffers from a unique challenge. And I call it the guesswork problem. In just about any other skill domain, you get real-time, concrete, personalized, very specific feedback from reality, or your instructor can see it because it's observable. If you're learning to swim or you're learning to play music, you know when you hit the wrong stroke or hit the wrong note because your reality will tell you, or your instructor will be able to see reality and tell you. But meditation is invisible and nonverbal. And so all of your feedback loops are up against a tougher guesswork problem where you have to figure out and you're not sure how to do it. And if you have an expert with you, you have to package it into these words, which are terrible tools for the job, ship it across the void. They have to do their own guessing, then ship it back. And the whole thing is just gunked up everywhere. So against this guesswork problem, I thought, are there modern tools that we could use for the first time to make progress on this? And so we started as a neurotech company, and we're lugging around a lot of equipment to identify what are the biosignatures, what are the biosignals and the patterns within them that might indicate someone's moving towards or getting into jhana. And so lots of expensive gear and going to meditation retreats where people can already get into the jhanas, see if we can use the signals plus the machine learning to identify the patterns and then create devices that will sort of guide novices with much less guesswork. And what ended up happening is we needed to run our own retreats to collect more data, and those took off on us. And so it became clear that we could start a movement, begin to shift the Overton window around what the heck the jhanas are, the fact that they exist, that they're valuable, and in doing so, make everything easier. And so that then led to Jhourney and its current manifestation, which is the startup. We don't use neurotech equipment and have sort of delayed that indefinitely because we discovered that pedagogy alone could get 60 to 70% of people into the jhanas in a week. And so we've done all kinds of stuff like pull from positive psychology and pedagogy science and the US military to see if we can come up with analogous inspiration to make it easier to solve the guesswork problem using really thoughtful pedagogy. And that's sort of where we are today. And I think increasingly, a guesswork problem is a really good fit for personalized tutoring. And AI is an unprecedented opportunity to build personalized tutoring. So we're doing more and more of that. So I'll leave it there as Artem. That was a long opening, but that I think covers my personal journey, at least part of it. and why these are so near and dear to my heart, and why I think the startup exists and it's exciting.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Thanks for unpacking that, Steve. And I think, I think what's really interesting is that, it seems like the jhanas are not so easy, and it's not like something that comes easily to most people. But, what's fascinating is that you taught yourself this practice and like figured it out by doing it. Makes me kind of wonder if there's, I did notice, like, before we even started, you were asking all these questions, right? Of like who the audience is, which is like really kind of thinking of like, how do I orient to the situation, which is kind of thoughtful. And yeah, I'm just wondering if you feel like you have a particular maybe talent of like figuring these kind of things. You mentioned you're an engineer as well, because that's kind of the part of the story that kind of strikes me as like very unique. I don't know if many people stumbled on jhanas themselves, or I don't know, maybe it's more common than I think. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great question. And I think the answer is both more common than you would think. And so many people are so close and they don't know it. So and I'll give you a few sort of anecdotes why I think that's the case. The first is that many people, when they first experience the jhanas, are like, whoa, this is familiar. There's some aspect here that I know somewhere in me. Like maybe as a child, I remember this one moment where like it just seemed as like everything was just okay, and an ecstasy arose from that. Or maybe this happens to me when I'm 90 minutes into ecstatic dance every fourth time I go. Or this is MDMA without the drug, some people with psychedelic experience will say. I just saw someone in the, I'm not really monitoring the chat, but I just had a notification in the chat pop up that say Jhanas 101, please. So let's talk about that for a second. And then we'll loop back to why they're also, I think, pretty common, or more common than you'd expect. So the jhanas are a set of altered states that you can learn to enter into with a bit of meditation practice. And they really span the spectrum from high energy bliss, like ecstasy, to peace in the first four jhanas. And these are remarkably like striking states. It's kind of shocking that you can learn to enter into these. I think Vox called them the opposite of a panic attack. And I think that's a good intuition primer. The same mechanism that sort of gets you to an anxiety loop, or in an extreme case, a full-on panic attack, where your attention gets pulled into some anxiety and you feel the anxiety, which makes your attention focus more, which means you feel more anxiety, which makes you focus more. Like that loop can be run for gratitude or kindness or tremendous stillness and freedom. Another way of priming the intuition is imagine falling in love. At first, it can be absolutely ecstatic, total infatuation. You can barely sleep, but nobody wants to stay infatuated forever. That would be exhausting. And over time, that settles into like a more oceanic love. And from there, maybe like a softer contentment. And from there, just like if you've been married for decades and you're just madly in love with your partner, it doesn't look like infatuation, I don't think. I've only been married for 5 years or so. 4 years. But it's just a profound stillness. It has a coming home quality to it, I think, around a partner who you've been in love with for a long time. Another quick example is imagine you're extremely dehydrated on a hike. You've been out of water for 4 hours. You finally get back home to water. You have your first water bottle, and it is ecstasy. The most pleasurable thing you could be doing on the planet right now is absolute ecstasy. And then you have your second water bottle, and it's just not the same high energy. It's still the most pleasurable thing you could be doing, but it's like an incredible gratitude that you're back at water after this wonderful day. And then after you had your fill of water, you might want to slip into the pool or swim in the lake, and that might be deeply satisfying. And then after that, you might want to rest under a tree, and that might be a profound stillness kind of thing. So this arc that the nervous system runs is familiar. And learning to navigate it simply via dynamics of attention and emotion allows you to sort of lean into aspects of that arc and amplify them. I don't love talking about the sort of explosive ecstasy or the peak states or the amplification in a way, because it's actually about more subtraction than addition. It's about learning to sort of fall backwards into the experience metaphorically, or like slip into a hot tub, like relax and surrender to that which is arising, as opposed to like punching the button or slamming into it. There ends up being some nuance here. But one other thing I'll say on the Jhana 101 topic is that it largely seems like they've been rediscovered across time and space in most of the contemplative traditions that I'm familiar with. The early Buddhists use the term jhana, and they've mapped them in a particular way that is conducive to skill development, and is one of the reasons why I think I found them there first. But Saint Teresa de Avila and the Christian mystics she'll talk about her layers of the interior castle, and on her way to union with God, which sounds eerily similar phenomenology. There's the Persian Sufis have their own language. The Greek Orthodox, or Eastern Greek Orthodox Christians with hesychasm practice, yoga traditions with their dhyanas and arguably some of their chakra systems. There are these largely appear to be tradition agnostic attractor basins and the available state space of the nervous system that you can learn to slip into. And I think maybe even more excitingly than the fact that they seem to have this universal human quality to them, both in that they're familiar when you experience them and that they appear across traditions, is that just about every tradition, contemplative tradition, makes use, of however defined its goal, whether it's enlightenment or theosis or something else, makes use of what you might call, what Shinzen Young will talk about as like 3 pillars, which is equanimity or sensory conductivity, sensory clarity, and it's concentration, equanimity, and
I'm also blanking. Is it compassion? I'm forgetting also what it was.
I've said this so many times.
Yeah.
Let me just
concentration, equanimity, sensory clarity. Thank you, Simon.
That's it. Thank you. Saved by the audience. Thank you all. And so concentration, I actually like to replace with the word collectedness because it implies less effort in English.
Yeah.
Equanimity, I like to replace with sensory conductivity, or really emotional conductivity. And Shinzen Young has also started using conductivity to describe equanimity. And sensory clarity is sort of really beginning to sort of see the details of your experience. The jhanas, or whatever you want to call them, these attractor basins in the state space of the nervous system, kind of max out all 3. They have this wide open, like opposite of dissociation quality, an incredible amount of conductivity. You would just wonder and awe to the max, wide open, vulnerable to the entire emotional system, and as a result, free. And then because you're so quiet, calm, and collected, you have that collectedness. It is the most collected, just simple, abiding. I have rested my attention into stability with such stability that it's the most concentrated I've ever been in my life. And that allows to observe the smallest low-level phenomenon in my own mind body, all rolled into one. And so these altered states offered an incredible foundation by which to explore my own system and learn about myself, which is one of the ways they lead to altered traits. Okay, so that's a Jhana's 101 and a bit about why people stumble into them in a bunch of different contexts and why many folks are closer than they think, because in some ways, I think they're deeply human.
Yeah, I think another thing that you say is that it's not quite like it's not something you mistake. You know what I'm saying? Like there's actually like, it's, if you're either in it or you're not. And so it's like, I guess that makes it easier to kind of assess on retreat if people are entering it or not.
Exactly. And you're pointing at something here that I think is extremely important and easy to overlook, which is that in a domain where there's so much guesswork and the stakes are so high, I think the stakes are extremely high in meditation. In a world where superintelligence and super longevity have become 2 of the most important industries of our generation, it's only a matter of time, in my opinion, before super well-being is taken seriously. What's the point of being old and smart if you're not happy? And the stakes at hand for super well-being, I think the real shots on goal are things like genetic engineering. There's a whole bunch of ethical questions that rise with some of these shots on goal, but just putting those to a side for a second, you got things like genetic engineering, you got things like neurotech, you got things like custom psychedelics and pharmacology. And I also think you have, let's take seriously the technology behind the world's wisdom traditions that appear to have been bright spots in our history of delivering people to extraordinary well-being. And so the stakes are high when you're talking about contemplative practice and meditation. I think there's really a huge value in gain to be had, and you're up against this guesswork problem. And so one of the things that's extremely valuable in that kind of environment are things that orient you, and things that provide forcing functions to learn certain skills, or provide feedback to let you know, yes, I am sort of at least minimally proficient in things like relating to goals without striving, replacing my inner critic with an inner coach, and a certain degree of self-compassion, being able to run at least some level of subtlety, or at least some level of granularity experiments between attention and emotion, these kinds of things. And so having an experience where it's like, whoa, what happened? That was an altered state that pulled me in. Like it almost felt like I wasn't doing it anymore. And it has this afterglow and this sort of peak experience quality, can serve as a mile marker that can be really valuable as we orient ourselves to this really, really exciting journey. And at the end of the day is, ironically, all about coming home.
Nice. Yeah. I guess I'll ask maybe one more question, and maybe then we'll get a taste of towards jhana meditation. I was wondering, you bring up like the guesswork problem, and like a big part of your approach is like, how do you tighten these kind of feedback loops so people can kind of see like what's maybe taking them off track and how to get on track. I am curious, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's like a high percentage of people that do your retreats experience jhanas, but obviously not everybody does. So what are like some of the barriers or the things that people end up running into that like the most common barrier, or the kind of the problems they have that prevent them from accessing jhana?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's one that I actually don't have as confident of an answer as I would like. So we've had about 1,300 students go through our week-long retreats. And at this point, I was like, oh, we're going to be prediction machines. Like I'm going to take one look at you, and I'm going to tell you how many days you have until jhana. And that is just not the case. We've run a bunch of different, psychometric questionnaires. We've rotated from telegin absorption based off the hypnosis literature to self-compassion to grit to other things. We're using like super forecaster style prediction calibration things with our facilitators, and analyzing them afterwards so we can close the loop on just human intuition, even if we can't actually explain what's going on. We're still doing this, and I think we are making grounds. And this is, in my opinion, a very solvable problem. But it's remained more elusive than I expected to be able to say whether or not this person, in relatively short order, with just a little interaction with them, is going to enter in the jhanas quickly, or not at all, or it's going to be a bit of a slog. There are a few things that intuitively, and we have some evidence to suggest are significant. And one of them is how much I like to say they're like a Sherlock, they're like a playful Sherlock Holmes. So much, we probably are all familiar with the experience of trying to learn something hard, and you get that pit in your stomach, and things can start to look like despair, like I don't understand, and it's going to be so much work to figure out how to understand. And that can create a sticky, icky, like not good experience or sensation, and ultimately lead to lack of motivation and quitting. We've also all had the experience where you're like treasure hunting. Imagine being like a toy treasure hunt as a kid, or in a mystery movie or some sort of game. And the next time you get stopped in your tracks, it like increases the excitement. It's like, what? Wait a second. I was doing loving kindness 2 hours ago, and that took me into places where I was starting to tear up. And right now it's dry as hell. There's just not like, it's just me just slamming against myself. What on earth is going on? I'm on the cusp of learning something about myself, and I can't wait. So this sort of like Sherlock Holmes excitement quality, and it has a playful quality too. It's not like a seriousness. That I think is a huge tell. The second tell is what I'll call, again, I like to kind of pull on this word, conductivity. And there's this exercise. Maybe actually, if we have show notes, Artem, we can put it in the notes. It's a 3-minute cry on command video from a professional actor. And he just walks you through how method actors, I think it's method actors, will what they're doing in their mind to bring themselves to cry on stage, and the realness, the authenticity of their cry. And as you do it, and he invites you to do the same thing, you may sort of start to tear up or sob to varying degrees. And the extent to which that is like an open and readily available experience for somebody, and they are already sort of relating to grief in a way where like grief and love can be two sides of the same coin, as opposed to, I never want anything to do with that. Like grief cannot be. I will orient my entire life around not feeling grief. That's what I sort of mean by conductivity. And if someone already has a bit of that quality, that's the other thing that I think is a really good predictor of and less likely to get stuck. I'll say one final thing on this, which is it's easy to sort of put something like conductivity, emotional conductivity, on a pedestal. And I think that's actually a little unwise, because we all have, our nervous systems don't do things without a reason. And you may have had a prior experience where the grief is overwhelming, or you could have had some trauma in your background of all kinds of shapes and forms. And so the key to play this game, I think, is really to learn how to explore, how to open up the range of emotional conductivity while staying inside what the literature would call your window of tolerance. And you never want to move into a place where you're extraordinarily hyper aroused or extraordinarily hypo aroused, like kind of shutting down, getting numb. If you're there, then you sort of know that you want to find a way to ground yourself, get back to sort of basis, and then play the game within sort of a safer sandbox. And there are tools and ways to do that. And we talk about some of that on the retreat.
Yeah, beautiful. Playful Sherlock Holmes, kind of a sense of openness, curiosity.
That's right.
I think it was in Chula Das's book, The Mind Illuminated, he would talk about that, there's a way of, when you forget that you're meditating and you lose concentration, your attention goes off of the object. You could be like, oh, damn. You could have this reaction of like, oh, damn, again, I messed up. Or you could have this, when you find awareness, you could actually celebrate that. So it seems like having this kind of positive outlook of like, oh, this is actually a gift, and coming back to that is very helpful for, going deeper into these states and into concentration and meditation.
I think you're dead on. And I love the way you say that. And there's something there that I think is also really valuable and easy to miss, which is that itself is a little mini feedback loop.
Yeah.
If you find yourself feeling disappointed or lower in motivation when you catch yourself mind wandering, I would say 99 out of 100 people just keep grinding on. And I think that's going to be right into a brick wall.
Yeah.
What I think is the opportunity there is like, oh, there's something in my system that is leading to disappointment here. Can I find what that is? Can I run an experiment where I sort of convert that self-criticism into, come here, my friend. Like, you're afraid of failure. Come here. I will hold you, that part of me that's afraid of failure. I will not leave you, and we will fail together. But damn it, we're in this together. And can every new distraction then be a reminder of the love for yourself? Or, pick your metaphor. Those kinds of experiments, those are micro, subtle little things. And if you blow past them with a grind set, you're going to hit a brick wall. But if you come at it with there is something interesting there. Sherlock Holmes cap, here we go. That'll bring you home.
Beautiful. Well, Stephen, what do you say? Maybe right now is a good time to give us a taste of the kind of meditations that you facilitate at Jhourney. And
yeah, happy to. How much time would you like to do a guided meditation?
Whatever you think is a good amount of time. Just throw kind of a number out. I was thinking anywhere from the 20 to 30, 15, 20, 30, anything in that range. I don't know. Whatever might be good. Yeah.
That sounds great. I'll riff for what I'll sort of kind of tentatively look at as like 20-ish minutes. Might be a little shorter, might be a little longer. And because I think you said you wanted to leave some time for questions at the end. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're going for another, what is this, 50 minutes?
Yeah, we'll go to like 1:30 about.
Okay, great. So we have some time. So it may even go closer to 30. So I'm going to, before I jump in, I'm going to frame a couple things. My favorite way of doing this is to mostly meditate the way I like to meditate. And it just so turns out that you all happen to be here. And this is a little different than an intentional guided meditation. It means that I'm actually not sort of trying to shape my words to really craft a particular experience for you. Instead, what I'm doing is I'm just trying to narrate my experience aloud. And so there may be things that come up for me, things that look like distractions. And, if I think about my daughter or something, it's obviously not relevant for you. And it would be extremely unlikely that you're also thinking about your children if you have them at the same time. That's not the point. The point is you're just going to see like in the same way you might watch like a professional tennis player serve the ball. And then that's way faster to then go try to serve the ball yourself than it is to like read a bunch of books and like, okay, in chapter 2, they said, move your feet like this and you hold the racket this way. What we want to try to do is sort of, I think, encourage this like tacit information transfer where you're based on the way you see me do something, and it might be unexpected. You just build a little intuition for how you might do it yourself. That being said, please lean into the experience and make it a meditation. Follow along best you can. You're both sort of learning and looking at someone else do something that may be unfamiliar to you, and you're going to serve the ball at the same time, so to speak. So that's one thing. The second thing is throughout meditation, we really like to say this phrase on retreat called reflect like a scientist, play like a child. And I just was earlier you talking about experiments and slowing things down and being like, this is really interesting, and Sherlock Holmes. That can get really intellectual and heavy and effortful quickly. What I want to invite you to do is during the experience, you're just going to dance. You're just going to get lost in the music. Let go of precision, let go of need to do it exactly as Sherlock Holmes would do it. And then afterwards, you'll have a moment to reflect and note the way Sherlock Holmes would note, there was something interesting there. I might dance a little differently next time. But while you're doing it, the more childlike and the more dancing and the more art and music we can lean into, the better. Okay. And then I think that's probably it. Oh, my third tip is everything is an opportunity to seek further into an openness, a sense of coming home, a sense of open-heartedness. And so if there is some annoying noise that happens in the room you're in, or I do something that is frustrating to you, all of these things are just another moment that you can turn towards and be like, come here, my friend. Join me as I explore how to come home. Cool. Okay, let's get started. So go ahead and get comfortable here. We're going to be here for between 20 and 30 minutes. And if you would like to move during this session, no problem. But go ahead and get comfortable to make it such that you're less likely to want to move. And then I like to start by taking a deep breath in. And just relax to let it out. I like to just let my breath trail off into the distance, already letting everything slow down. Another deep breath in. And relax to let it out. I'm noticing and letting my breathing slow down, become more natural. It's already a little bit of an invitation to relax on its own. And now I'm going to start doing two things that I like to do to start a meditation. One is a little thing I like to do to relax any mental tension. And then a progressive body scan to relax any physical tension. And then after that, I'm going to start intentionally moving towards an open-hearted experience. and just sinking further and further into that. So to start, I like to cast my mind wide open, vast like the sky. If there were an airplane in the far distance in the sky above, I would hear it. The tiniest of tremors coming through the floor beneath me, I would feel it. But I'm not reaching. I'm not effortfully expanding my awareness. Instead, I'm just dropping any boundaries, any sense of tight and narrow space, any notion of being inside some room or some enclosed area. And I'm just dropping it like I might drop bags on the floor after coming home from a long day at work. A vast sky mind. No boundaries. Free. And because it's wide open and free, it's also unconditionally accepting. Like clouds are rising in the sky, sounds may arise. Every experience is just another brush with my wide open, accepting mind. The hum of my refrigerator in the distance, the street noises, quiet outside, the touch of the cool air in the room moving across my skin, the folds of my shirt on my abdomen, the way it hangs on my shoulders, the tiny smells in the room. All of these things are reminders of how vast, free, wide open, and accepting a completely vast sky mind can be. I will also spend a few minutes here just finding layers of tension I didn't realize I was carrying. I'll find anything that feels like a sense of self, the knower behind my eyes and between my ears. That too is like a cloud rising in the sky. A reminder. A reminder that I'm free with no boundaries. And I'll invite that sense of self to come home just the way it feels when I come home after a long day at work. I might do the same with a sense of time. Any notion that time is moving on me, I can just invite that to come home to. And any sort of faster than thought, hard to put into words, sense of effort or tension or concentration somewhere in my mind, I'll just brush it with an invitation to come home to a vast, wide open, no boundaries, at ease mind. And now, with a mind vast like the sky, everything being brushed with an invitation to come home, I'll start doing a body scan from head to toe, looking for any muscles that I didn't realize I could relax further, that were carrying tension I didn't know was there. So starting at the very top of my head, like a slow motion shower, just coming down the forehead, towards the tops of the ears and the back of the head. Oh, I found a few forehead muscles that I didn't realize were tight. Softening into the eyes. So many ways to soften my eyes. It's as if there's 100 muscles in there, all of which just a little more tense than they need to be. May these muscles too come home. May they relax. Take a break. I just had a thought about how you all are doing. And a fear I still carry. I'm a grown man on a podcast talking about relaxing as if it's something you don't already know how to do. And so I'm going to just welcome that fear. Come here. Come here, little fearful Stephen. May the tension in my heart area or pit in my stomach, may it too come home. And back to the body scan. Down to my cheeks, my jaw. These muscles are often more powerful than I think they are. And I'm just going to let them take a break. Kindly invite them to come home too. Down through my throat. Softening muscles I didn't know were tight from holding up my head or getting excited about talking to you all. Down both my shoulders, letting them slump and away. They too can be powerful. But right now, there's no need. May they rest. Down both arms, into the elbows, the forearms, into the hands. I can start to feel the pulse of my heartbeat in my fingertips. The tingles and the buzz of how sensitive the hands are. And this cloud of pulsing sensations. I'll just gently extend a kind invitation to come home to. Softening finger muscles. Thanking them for all their work. And then moving back up to the upper chest and the upper back. Letting these bigger muscles take a break too. Oh, I just realized I was sort of narrowing more effortfully focusing on my chest and my back. And so I'm just going to pull up for a second, blow my mind wide open again. No boundaries, no effort, just freedom and kindness, and a gentle invitation to bring myself and my experience home. I often end up crying in meditation. There's no need for you or anybody else to think that they need to cry. There's something about really letting go and kindly accepting my experience in my body just as it is. And the invitation to come home. That feels open-hearted already, even before I go looking for some gratitude, kindness. Moving down into my stomach, intentionally letting everything hang loose. I like to see just how vulnerable I can feel in the stomach. And out of habit, I like to take note of how the more vulnerable I feel, often the safer I feel. The more relaxed and at ease I am in the gut, unguarded, the more visceral the experience of safety can be. Moving down into my hips, to my legs, down towards my knees. Oh, I was clenching down here and I didn't realize it. A little force in my hamstrings, a little tightness in my glutes. Inviting all of these big muscles to come home like everything else. I just had a little fear again about how you all are doing. And I'm just going to welcome that. Brush it with a little gratitude. I'm glad somebody's looking out for how this experience goes. And I'm going to continue on my way, relaxing every aspect of tension, mental and physical, against a vast sky mind, at ease, free, and kind. Down into my calves, to my ankles, soles of my feet, and the tips of my toes. If I pause for a moment, I can often find the pulse of my heartbeat in the soles of my feet too. And now I'll zoom out and take the whole body all at once. All sensations, an overwhelming amount of sense data, shimmering and glimmering, physical and emotional, with pulsing heartbeat and oscillating breath. The entire sensorium, body, mind, everything coming in through the soundscape behind my eyelids. One massive cloud of sense data. No need for precision, letting myself relax any need for clarity, and instead just slipping into a bit more wonder and awe at the whole thing all at once. And now, with a mind wide open and a body at ease, and a little bit of wonder at the whole thing, the absolute miracle of each of the sense gates of being alive, I'm going to start treating the body like a heat map of emotion. It's glimmering and shimmering, it's vibrancy. If it shimmers or glimmers in this way, we call it anger, or we call it sadness, or we call it joy. And without any need for specifics or precision, I'm just going to let that shimmer and glimmer happen as I drop a few of my favorite loving kindness phrases. And what I'm looking for is a little open-heartedness. Anything that shimmers or glimmers a little differently as I find my way into something more open-hearted than when I started. I'm going to use the phrases I always use. And of course, I'd encourage you to find something that feels good to you, whether it's a phrase or a visual or just the faintest of memories. May all beings be happy. May they be healthy. May they be filled with joy and live lives without suffering. That felt a little flat to me. It wasn't much of an effect at all when I said those things. I know it often starts that way. And I'm meditating in public and had a chaotic morning. And all of these things can muddy the waters. And when nothing happens, it's just another invitation to sink deeper into a wide open sense of coming home, where shimmering, glimmering, awe and wonder at the body. May all beings be happy. May they be healthy. May they be filled with joy. And live lives without suffering. I felt a little something that time when I said filled with joy. Like a little blossoming in the stomach, a little below the heart space. Relaxing. I'm feeling a little tight in the head, like I'm searching for something effortfully. My brows are furrowed. I'm going to just open up again, find any layers of tension in there that I can let go. Welcome. Come home. That made me surprisingly emotional. Just welcoming all that effort I was carrying in my head. And it seemed to soften things up. And I'll go another round now. May all beings be happy. Wouldn't it be nice if my loved ones were healthy? If my wife and daughter were filled with joy and lived lives without suffering? That time, I felt a little something in the heart space. I dropped a tear, but that was for me welcoming my efforting self. I didn't realize was trying so hard. And it's mingling a bit with the idea that my wife and daughter be happy. May all beings be healthy. So many beings. Impossible to hold all at once in my head. In front of me, behind me, left, right, up, down, in every direction. An overwhelming, an absurd idea. And naive too. And that's just another invitation to surrender. Surrender to my own ignorance, my inability to do something like hold an infinite number of beings in my head. And just sink into a humility or a wonder. And let the idea of all beings being happy be a little more overwhelming. May they be healthy. That was like a little goodwill, a little softness in the chest and the throat area. May they be filled with joy. Live lives without suffering. I'm starting to feel like I'm sinking a little bit. It doesn't quite do it justice, but that there is a groundedness in my stomach. I'm going to lead into that for a second. I'm going to go down into my stomach and say these phrases from there. I know from experience, if I really feel at ease, grounded, and safe, often the other emotions flow a bit more freely. I might imagine having tree roots shooting down from my heart and my stomach deep into the ground. Just for a few seconds here to really feel what it's like to feel grounded and safe. It seems to feel almost cooler and warm in my stomach at the same time. Safe and powerful simultaneously. Oh, it would feel good if all beings were happy. If they were healthy. If they were filled with joy. And live lives without suffering. How we would all rest. A quiet love. I'm starting to feel pulled down here, which is unusual for me. Usually the higher energy states that pull me first. Like I could just sink into my gut area. Quietly, effortlessly wishing all beings be happy. That they be healthy, filled with joy, and living lives without suffering. Each of these phrases is almost at the point. It's the feeling behind them, shimmers and the glimmers, subtle changes that are opening up in my gut as I relax further. Quiet wishing of everybody have peace, that I have peace. I know from experience that if I go back up into the heart space or the back of my head, I'll often find higher energy versions of open heartedness. So I'm going to do 1 or 2 rounds of that. So, not pushing that wonderful, dark, quiet contentment in my gut away in any way. And keeping the mind wide open, vast like the sky. I'm just going to go up and inhabit the heart space a little bit, or the back of the head, and see what glimmers or shimmers happen here. As I say, may all beings be happy. Oh, there we go. A little celebratory joy in the heart and the back of the head, the idea. I just had a vision of my daughter squealing with excitement this morning at breakfast. And the fun joy behind that. May all beings be happy. May they be filled with joy and live lives without suffering. I am starting to feel like I'm dancing. The glimmers and shimmers, the flickers of emotion as I pulse these statements and lean into their affect. It's like a form of art or music. And I can feel the heart space opening up, the back of the head, and there's like a hot quarter in the back of my mind. Joy the size of a quarter. And I could just start slipping into these, like I might get lost in a good song. No need for anything else in the world to exist. But this little flavor of what it's like in the mind body to wish that my loved ones be happy, that they be healthy, that they be filled with joy, and live lives without suffering. I'm moving intentionally up into my head, feeling a little call to that higher energy, the bigger smile, a more celebratory affect. For the sake of time, I'm going to bring us to a close here. Before we wrap up, just take note if there was anything in your experience in the last 25, 30-ish minutes that was surprising. That's something that you might be genuinely excited to explore later. I do this mindful review in a way of all of my meditations. Today, I was surprised by how the vast sky mind alone brought a little welling up within me. There's something about dropping that tension behind the eyes and between the ears that I identify as self that had a loving, freeing quality to it that I wasn't expecting. I'm also struck by how easy it was to slip into my stomach and find a deep and visceral peace. Maybe I'll start there in the future. You'll have your own ideas for experiments to run. To bring us back to the room, let's go ahead and, when you're ready on your own time, take one big deep breath in and just relax to let it out. Well, and you can gradually open your eyes and come back to the room.
Beautiful. Stephen, thanks so much for guiding that. I was feeling a lot of joy, and I was just, one of the things that was coming up for me. I'm like, oh, I'm recording a podcast and I'm meditating and I'm holding a community session at the same time. And I was just feeling a lot of joy at that, to be able to kind of do that and have this kind of level of relaxation and joy. And yeah, I can definitely see the direction where it's going. And I felt a lot of collectedness and, yeah, just a lot of joy and relaxation with this practice. And I'm really curious to hear, if anybody else wants to reflect, or if anybody has any comments or, questions or anything they want to bring in. I think right now is a good time for that. I think they're all, in the bliss of the jhana. It just feels too good to speak or say anything.
It's a treat to meditate with you guys. I'm chilled out right now. I was starting to really start to feel the pull, like where it was beginning to. If we went for another, I don't know, it's hard to say, 10 or 20 minutes, and really just sinking into the thing that felt like it wanted to be sunk into. It may have taken on a life of its own for me, and it can get hard to speak. And the thing that I think it's like when I think of a proper jhana, it sort of ends up getting a little bit, of a gradient there. But so Thanks for inviting me to meditate with you all, Artem. Lena, I see a hand.
Yeah, Lena, go ahead.
Hey, Stephen. Thank you for the meditation. Um, oh my gosh, the dialogue that I want to start is really deep and like I had a lot of anxiety during that meditation and I was sitting through it and I cried, but I actually yeah, and I really appreciated it and I appreciated the work and I settled in. But one thing that I'm really dealing with, and this is great to mention in a metamodern space, and I'm trying to formulate words. Spirituality is drastically changing, and I want to say that I had a really strong meditation practice. I study neuroscience and design, and I'm also trying to integrate, like, this is so beautiful because you are creating a way to integrate science and spirituality. But my question is always, always, always also, and this is a bit like challenging, so we don't have to answer it fully. Sorry, so I also study the decolonization of Buddhism and yoga, and I'm trying to really look at how we can do this and also respect the lineages that, have led these. So one thing that comes to mind with that practice, and that scares me, is sila, the idea of morality and a moral code, which to me has always been a staple of jhana practice, and how jhana has always been a ladder that we can climb. And I do believe there's multiple pillars of jhana, and you can learn lower pillars and it's still like an amazing process. I love what you do, but I wanted to ask how you appreciate the lineages, and how do you just assume that everyone has a moral code and is going to use this for good? Because within the tech world, I'm like so scared that meditation will be used not without sila, without values and having a strong moral code, that it is going to be used for dangerous and bad causes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was actually hard for me to say. I've been a meditation practitioner for 18 years, and I actually worked in Sri Lanka. And believe in this wholeheartedly, but I'm also so terrified of where I could go. So
yeah. I can feel the weight of the question and appreciate the way in which you are taking it so seriously and offering it so like earnestly to me here, to the group. I think it's a beautiful question. I think the question at its root is, if you divorce something like loving kindness practice from its traditional attachment to Shila, which is a Pali term that usually refers to morality in English, will you end up sort of offering some sort of like emotional balm to people who go on to do evil in the world? And that would be a scary thought. And I think my first instinct is to just like celebrate that fear, no matter how we choose to answer the question from here. From there, I think
I do, because that fear is rooted in deep love for humanity and deep love for myself and in deep love for, so when that fear arises within meditation, I always honor the love that I feel towards my people. And that's why I'm able to have the conversation and create connection and not division around it, because it's so important for us to come together collectively in meditation and through solving these problems, we will reach, a better state. But it's about love. And how do we maintain and move that love forward by accepting the fear 100%. Thank you. You can go on. Sorry I interrupted, but I love that.
And I love how you're. I'm glad you put a point in that, Lena. I think that's really important, and it's also clear and fun to see in you. So, my experience is that really leaning into the jhanas, reducing friction in your own nervous system, use more like engineering speak, to explore and earnestly grapple with your own karma, to use more traditional speak, is a process that often surfaces uncomfortable blind spots, which can be tied to ethics and morality. And as a result, and it makes you more, I would say, like interpersonally sensitive. I have motivated reasoning to believe that. I have, at this point, really found a huge amount of coming home in this journey for me. And I've started a company to make these experiences more accessible to people. And so I want to name my motivated reasoning. I also want to name that I think the best way to answer this question is empirically. A lot of the ideas in the lineages and a lot of the ideas in what I would say like the broader metamodern community, not just on the topic of jhana and shila, but about things like colonialization and coupling certain things together and divorcing other things from one another, are all really thoughtful ideas born from a love for our communities and humanity. And I think often, maybe in every domain, the most exciting results, the most clear sort of indication of what is the path forward comes from empirical data. And so the things that I would love to see is like a thousand flowers bloom approach, where we honor the lineages and their incredible dedication to preserving the past, or preserving what I think we should admit is their understanding of the past. And that is beautiful. And I am grateful for that. Once I learned what the jhanas were, I went and studied with a number of teachers and found such beauty and have a deep debt to what teachers have offered me. And we live in a really exciting time in which we can cobble together new tools and explore new combinations of ideas and see what of these have what results over time. And so one of the things that I find exciting is the way in which learning to enter into a jhana requires turning towards the kind of fear, that little micro versions of it that I named in my little guided meditation there, bigger versions like the ones you just named that I think have a special beauty around real heavy concerns that might affect your community. And in that process, if turning towards our fear and our full set of emotions makes it more likely to then lean into a Shila enhanced lifestyle, it may be possible that you can turn this virtuous cycle from both sides. And so on the one hand, you could start with something like Sila and a set of ethics. On the other hand, you could start with something like emotional conductivity, leaning into open-heartedness, and then offer a trend or a tendency, if not, a locked-in, we're going to go make every tech executive a saint. So that is the thing that I'm most excited to explore, and I'm excited to treat it as an empirical question and name the fact that I do have motivated reasoning because I'm a Jhana fan.
Thank you, Stephen. That actually, and sitting with the fear helps to transform it into the love and empowerment and liberation. And thank you for naming your fear. I was going through my own and it felt strange and awkward, but like powerful at the same time. So I voiced my fear because I'm sitting here disconnected, like in this weird, what are you even doing? Like, this is madness. But then I'm like, this is actually brilliant. And then I started just sitting, and yeah, your practice is powerful, but scary because the world is evolving so rapidly. Do you know what I mean? Like, and these techniques are so powerful and we have access to them. So it's like both scary and beautiful. And you're allowing a space where we can sit with all of those emotions and really grow and move through. So thanks for hearing me. And I will now mute and pass the feather.
Yeah, thanks, Lena. I just want to check with you, Stephen, if you have like maybe another 10, 15. We might have a couple of questions, so just want to check.
Wow, the time flew by. I can do definitely another 5, maybe go a little past that, but I'm gonna end up being a little tight on time beyond that.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so Morris, go ahead and unmute. What do you got?
Thank you very, very much. It reminded me blissful states of deep meditation. This session does exactly what says on the tin. I was a little bit distracted, a little bit not fully present, but even a shitty meditation is better than no meditation at all. So thank you very much for this reminder. It will keep me, motivated and incentivized. So sending you good vibes and words of appreciation. Thank you.
No,
Thank you,
no,
Mars.
no such thing as a shitty meditation, especially with the orientation. I feel like that Stephen brings in. I wanted to also comment on something that Lena was saying on this kind of question of morality, and I've listened to a handful of your podcasts that you've done, Stephen, and I've read a lot of stuff. So I've read a lot of the critiques and stuff and things that have popped up, and yeah, I was just kind of really struck by the way that you've engaged with these inquiries and how you've answered a lot of, I think a lot of the kind of the concerns that people have brought in. You've answered, and I think that, what Lena brings in is really important. There is a power in what you're teaching and what you're doing. And, just recently, we had all this stuff with Epstein, and like Jeffrey Martin was a person that came up in the files. I know you've done one of his courses before. I've heard you mention that. So it's just, you have, people kind of peddling enlightenment and things like that. And then at the same time, there could be all this other stuff that's happening behind closed doors. So, just my sense of your kind of where you're at is, I feel really good about it and everything I've seen you put out. So I just wanted to share that and reflect that. And I feel like you're really working with this with care. And I've seen the stuff you did around like safety, and like there's people have concerns around safety. And it seems like you're really developing powerful protocols to kind of make sure that things don't go haywire or people don't get into like really kind of problematic territory. So I just wanted to voice that.
Yeah, thank you, Artem. I think if I were to sort of off the cusp put into words what I think the biggest concerns are one, around safety, and does like jhana meditation or meditation writ large lead to potentially destabilizing experiences? Another is, does jhana meditation create further optimizers instead of contemplatives? And I think a third would probably be just what Lena said, decoupling it from ethics. And those are probably 3 of the biggest ones. And I think each one of them is a really thoughtful and concern coming from a place of like real desire to see good in the world. And I think each one has, fortunately, an answer, at least in terms of like, let's go empirically find out. And so on the optimizers becoming achievers, it is so much because the jhana practice is sort of self-correcting in a way. Like you can't get into a jhana if you're striving, or if you're like craving getting into a jhana. It's a beautiful feature, not a bug. I think some people think it's a bug. I think it's a feature because it's a forcing function to learn to relate to goals without striving, which ends up being a life skill so valuable beyond the cushion. Learning to relate to goals from a place of play and love, as opposed to obligation or should, which Mark Rosenberg would call the most violent word in the English language, is, I think, a huge life skill just in of itself. with regards to Lena's concern and Sheila, I think it's such a good concern, and one that I really want to see empirically addressed by having 1,000 flowers bloom. And I think there's a few, maybe there's a few additional things to give us some cause for optimism about the jhanas. One, it seems crazy to me that you could truly divorce the jhanas, which are so open, aware, open, like raw and vulnerable, open-hearted, from how you move through the environment. And if we think of where moral and ethical frameworks come from, and what is the optimal moral and ethical framework, I'm reminded of C.S. Lewis's definition of, you can think of it like a fleet of ships. And morality is that which affords three things. One, your ship doesn't sink. Two, you don't bump into and hurt the others. And three, y'all get to where you're going. Like, morality comes from what it means to live a fulfilling human life. And so if you're really meditating in a way that's going to leave you vulnerable and open and completely like unified with your environment in a way, and then it seems likely to me that you're going to grow sensitive to the ways in which that fleet of ships can go from one port to another. I also frequently find myself concerned about moral atrocities that we're complicit in today, despite our best efforts. 200 years ago, 150 years ago, chances were high, if you were born into the States, that you were probably pro-slavery. Those are info flows. That's shocking and really uncomfortable to me. And it suggests to me, like, what is it today that we might be complicit in? And I'm talking about the things that, like, we have no idea because we're living in the water. And so in a way, what we want is, I think, a system that's going to help us support getting to further and further sort of ethical alignment. We want like a sensitivity and a tendency and like a orientation more than a list of rules. And that might start to look like something we could find empirically by how we move through the world internally and interpersonally too. So all such good critiques. And I'm really excited to see how it plays out. Oh, safety was the other one. That's like a whole other thing. I'll just sort of cheat here and say that arguably multiple of the world's leading experts on safety and meditation have said publicly that we've set a new bar for the industry. And it's because we've put so much time behind the scenes with a panel of experts to think about pre-screening folks based off of sort of mental health implications, to having systems in place and affording triaging and getting people to support and experts should they need it. By and large, what that is about is whether or not someone has ends up navigating outside of their window of tolerance and not being able to self-correct. And so you want to like give them the tools to self-correct. You want to be monitoring, and you also want to avoid scripting effects. There's a dynamic where I think you can even see some evidence of higher base rates of what you would call like adverse effects in traditions that basically say you're going to have them as part of your journey. So there's a whole world out there, and I think we're out of time, but happy to. We have a podcast on that, and there's other places we can talk.
I'll link to that podcast. I think you had a podcast on safety, so we could definitely link people to that. And yeah, and I think, anything that opens people up to more interiority and like exploring what's inside is going to can help, and is necessary for a more ethical world. I just saw this clip of Mark Andreessen, the techno-optimist, and he was basically saying, do not be introspective. Like, don't do that. And I think that's exactly what's wrong. I think that's one of the problems that we have in the world today. So I think that practices like this actually help with interiority. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you and me both on that one. I think I saw something like that briefly, and I think Elon might have said something similar.
Yeah, I think they all converge on that point. Don't be too introspective.
And I was like, man, if we were in a room for a week together, like I would there's just no way that's a ridiculous point of view.
Yeah.
But in their defense, I actually, to steel man it just for a second, one, because it's just good practice to sort of always be steel man on the other side. But two is, I see why they say that. Because so many of us, when we get introspective, we never get past our rumination loops. And that can suck the life right out of the room. And so if Mark Andreessen and Elon Musk's experience are really starting to introspect means that they like get stuck, then the question is, how might you offer them the tools to get unstuck?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great way to look at that. And just going to be respectful of your time, Stephen. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming on here. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And take care.
Take care out there, y'all. See ya.